Most people think danger announces itself. A raised voice, a threat, a moment that feels wrong. But the truth is quieter than that. Sometimes danger looks like a familiar face. A trusted friend, someone you'd never think to question. That's how this story begins, with trust. Michael Turner was 41 years old, not dramatic, not flashy, not reckless. He worked in information systems for a regional logistics company. The kind of job built on schedules, systems, and reliability. He liked structure, predictability, knowing what tomorrow was going to look like. People described him the same way: steady, dependable, easy to count on. If Michael said he'd do something, he did it. If he said he'd be somewhere, he showed up. He believed that consistency was how you built a good life, especially a marriage. Michael had been married to Laura for 9 years. Laura was 38, social, expressive, the kind of person who made conversations feel alive. She worked part-time coordinating events, fundraisers, corporate dinners, local gatherings where people talked and laughed and felt important for a few hours. She liked movement, attention, energy. Michael liked calm. At first, those differences felt complementary. She brought color into his life. He brought stability into hers. But over time, Laura started feeling restless. Not angry, not miserable, just unsatisfied. She didn't describe it as unhappiness. She described it as feeling unseen. Like her life was standing still while everyone else was moving forward. And dissatisfaction doesn't stay quiet forever. It looks for someone to hear it. That someone was David Ross. David was 43, divorced, no kids. He lived alone and worked in the same general industry as Michael. They met through overlapping professional circles. Conferences, meetings, casual conversations that turned into shared lunches. They weren't instant friends. This wasn't some dramatic connection. It grew slowly, complaints about work, jokes about deadlines. Conversations that stretched longer each time. Eventually, David started coming around more, group outings, casual dinners. Weekends where everyone ended up sitting around longer than planned. Laura noticed him. David listened, really listened. He remembered details. He asked follow-up questions. He made her feel interesting. That kind of attention feels harmless at first, then it doesn't. The conversations moved from group chats to private messages. From casual check-ins to long late-night texts. Nothing explicit, nothing obvious. But emotional closeness doesn't need explicit language. It just needs time. Laura talked about feeling unfulfilled. About Michael being predictable. About wanting more from life. David didn't challenge her. He agreed. He validated every frustration, reinforced every doubt. Quietly positioned himself as the one who understood her best, and slowly, the line shifted. What started as emotional support became emotional dependence. What felt like friendship became something else entirely. Months passed like that. Then one night, the conversation changed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even direct. Laura said something vague. What if things didn't have to stay this way? She didn't say divorce. She didn't say murder. But David heard the opening. He talked about how complicated divorce could be. How expensive, how public, how painful it would be to start over. Then he talked about alternatives. Not directly, not at first. Accidents happen, he said. People die every day. Unexpected things change lives in an instant. Laura didn't shut it down. She hesitated. She expressed fear. She said she didn't want anyone hurt. But she kept talking. And that was enough. October 17th began like any other weekday. Michael went to work, answered emails, sat through meetings, wrapped up tasks. Just after 6 in the evening, he left the office. He sent Laura a text. Heading home now. She never replied. Michael never arrived. Later that night, Laura said she assumed he was delayed, distracted, caught up with something. She didn't call repeatedly. She didn't panic. She went to bed. The next morning, she contacted police and reported her husband missing. Her voice was calm, controlled, concerned, but measured. Officers noted it, not as evidence, just as something they'd remember later. Investigators began tracing Michael's movements. Phone data showed something unusual. Michael hadn't followed his usual route home. His location diverted. His phone stopped transmitting later that evening. They started looking at the people closest to him, and David Ross surfaced immediately. David told investigators they'd met briefly for a casual drink. Nothing unusual, nothing tense, just conversation. But digital records told a different story. Location data placed Michael and David together longer than David claimed. Phone activity showed Michael's device went dark near David's last known location. 4 days after Michael disappeared, a county maintenance supervisor noticed an unfamiliar sedan pulled into a restricted service turnout near an unused access road. It wasn't parked casually. It wasn't abandoned in panic. It looked deliberate. The license plate matched Michael Turner's. Authorities secured the area and expanded their search. Several hundred feet from the vehicle, they found him. Michael Turner. A single gunshot wound ended his life. This wasn't random. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. Investigators returned to David. This time, the questions were sharper. David cooperated, almost too easily. But his story shifted. Small inconsistencies. Minor changes in timing. Details that didn't line up. Those cracks matter. Phones don't forget. Deleted messages aren't erased. They're buried. When investigators recovered communications between David and Laura, the entire story collapsed. Hundreds of messages. Emotional escalation. Planning. Fantasizing about a future without Michael. And finally, confirmation. I took care of it. Sent less than an hour after Michael vanished, David was arrested without incident. Laura was arrested the following day. David confessed first. He claimed it wasn't planned. That things got heated. That it happened in the moment. Ballistics and evidence told a different story. Laura tried to distance herself. She said she never wanted Michael dead. But encouragement is participation. Silence can be consent. And planning is intent. The jury saw it clearly. David Ross was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Laura Turner received 30 years for conspiracy to commit murder. They never married. They never built the life they imagined. Crimes like this don't start with violence. They start with permission. Permission to complain. Permission to fantasize. Permission to stop seeing another person as human. Michael trusted a friend, and that trust was the last clue. If stories like this make you pause, that's the point. This is the last clue. And if you want more real, solved crime stories that dig into the truth behind betrayal, obsession, and motive, subscribe to The Last Clue, because sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room is the one you trust the most.